Hello and welcome. Today you'll hear the true story of the Rothschild family, one of the most powerful and mysterious families in history. If you're learning English, try the shadowing technique, listen to each sentence and repeat it out loud. It will help you improve your pronunciation and fluency. Let's begin. The story of the Rothschild family begins not with gold or banks, but with coins in a glass case. In the 1700s, in a Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt, Germany, lived a man named Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He was not born rich. His father traded rare coins and taught Mayer how to read the value of money and the power of relationships. Their house was small, crowded, and sat under a red shield sign. Rothschild means red shield in German. At that time, Jewish families in Germany had very few rights. They could not own land. They paid special taxes. They were often banned from certain jobs. But they learned how to survive through trade, knowledge, and connection. Mayer understood this world well. He knew that being smart was not enough. You had to be quiet, careful, and 2 steps ahead. He began working with coins and antiques. But soon he realized that the real power was not in objects, it was in finance. He started lending money to small merchants, then to noblemen. He built trust. He kept his word. And slowly, he became known as someone who could be trusted with large sums. But Mayer had bigger plans. He had 5 sons, and he wanted them to become more than just local bankers. He wanted them to control the future. So Mayer sent each of his sons to a different city in Europe. One stayed in Frankfurt. One went to London. One to Paris. One to Vienna. And one to Naples. They were still young, but Mayer trained them hard. He taught them how to write in code. How to move money across borders. How to watch wars, politics, and kings, and use that knowledge to make deals. This was not a time of peace. Europe was full of conflict. And where there is war, there is need for money. The Rothschild sons became experts in moving funds from one country to another without delay. They used trusted couriers and secret letters. They built a private network stronger than many governments. And when Napoleon rose to power and shook all of Europe, the Rothschilds saw an opportunity. One of the most famous stories comes from the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Nathan Rothschild, the son in London, had set up a powerful banking house there. When the battle began between Napoleon and the British forces, everyone in Europe waited to hear who would win. Nathan received the news of Napoleon's defeat hours before anyone else, thanks to his own network of messengers. There is a story, still debated, that says Nathan rushed to the London Stock Exchange and pretended to be selling his investments. People thought he knew Britain had lost the battle, so they also began to sell. Prices dropped. Then, quietly, Nathan bought everything back at a low price, and when the truth arrived that Napoleon had lost, the market exploded, and Rothschild made a massive profit. Whether the story is fully true or not, one fact is clear: the Rothschild family had faster information than anyone else. And they used it. In the years that followed, the Rothschilds became the richest private family in the world. They funded governments. They helped build railroads across Europe. They financed mines, bridges, and wars. They were not just bankers, they became part of the machine that shaped modern Europe. Kings and ministers came to them not just for loans, but for advice. The family rarely appeared in public. They avoided attention. But behind the scenes, they had real power. Still, their success created enemies. In many countries, people were suspicious of Jews, and the idea of a Jewish family with so much wealth and influence caused fear. Conspiracy theories began to grow. Some said the Rothschilds controlled all the banks. Some said they started wars on purpose to make money. Most of these claims were false or exaggerated. But it is also true that the family used every tool, money, politics, secrecy, to grow their power. They never broke the law. But they did not always play fair. They gave loans with conditions. Sometimes, they pressured governments to make decisions that would protect Rothschild investments. In one case, they used their position to buy shares in a French company before the public knew its value would rise. That move made them a fortune. They also kept their wealth inside the family. Cousins married cousins. Inheritance was carefully controlled. Few people were allowed to know how much money they really had. Even today, the full size of their fortune is unknown. The Rothschild name became a symbol, for wealth, secrecy, and influence. In some ways, they were admired. In other ways, feared. But always, they were ahead. They understood something simple: if you control the money, you don't need to rule from a throne. By the mid-1800s, the Rothschild family was more than just rich. They were global. 5 branches in 5 major cities. Brothers writing letters every day in code. Private couriers moving gold across borders. Governments trusted them. Businessmen feared them. But times were changing, and power, once gained, is never safe forever. In Europe, revolutions were beginning. People were tired of kings and aristocrats. They wanted democracy. They wanted to break the old order, and the Rothschilds were part of that old order, whether they liked it or not. In 1848, revolutions exploded across the continent. Crowds in Paris attacked anything that looked like wealth or monarchy. The Rothschild Bank in Paris had to shut its doors for a while. For the first time in decades, the family felt real danger. They survived. They always did. But it showed them something important: money is powerful, but not bulletproof. At the same time, they were dealing with something else, a quiet but constant hatred. The Rothschilds were Jews. And even though they were rich, respected, and connected, they were never fully accepted. In many countries, Jews still could not own land, vote, or hold office. Some kings and nobles welcomed the Rothschilds' money but whispered insults behind their backs. Cartoons appeared in newspapers showing the family as greedy, ugly, controlling the world. These images were full of hate. But they worked. Ordinary people, angry at poverty and change, found an easy target. The Rothschild name became a symbol not just of wealth, but of everything people feared about the modern world: banks, debt, hidden deals, and invisible hands. The family tried to ignore it. They focused on business. They helped fund the Suez Canal in Egypt. They built railroads in France, Austria, and Russia. They even supported Jewish communities across Europe, building schools, hospitals, and synagogues. But they never pushed back against the hate publicly. They believed in staying quiet. Staying useful. Staying protected. In the late 1800s, another challenge appeared. The world of finance was changing. New banks were rising. The Rothschild model, quiet family networks and private letters, began to look slow compared to public stock markets and modern firms. In America, new giants appeared: J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Carnegie. The Rothschilds still had power in Europe, but not like before. And then came the 20th century. World War I was a disaster for Europe, and for the Rothschilds. The war divided the continent. Countries where the family had branches were now fighting each other. Austria against France. Germany against Britain. Brothers in different cities couldn't safely communicate. Their network, once so strong, became a weakness. Governments stopped trusting foreign bankers. Assets were frozen. Gold shipments were blocked. Still, they adapted. The London branch, led by Lionel and later Walter Rothschild, stayed strong. They helped fund Britain's war effort. Walter was also famous for something else: he was deeply interested in science, especially animals. He had a private zoo and supported research around the world. In 1917, he received a famous letter from the British government. It was the Balfour Declaration, supporting the idea of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The letter was addressed to him, not because he was a politician, but because the government trusted the Rothschild name. After the war, the family returned to rebuilding. But they were no longer alone. Other banks had learned their tricks. Other families had built their own networks. The Rothschilds were still rich, but they were no longer the center of global finance. Then came the darkest chapter, the 1930s and 1940s. Nazi Germany rose to power. The Rothschilds, as Jews and as symbols of wealth, became one of their main targets. In Austria, the Nazis took over the Rothschild Bank, the family palace, and all their art. Members of the family were arrested, threatened, and forced to sell everything for almost nothing. The Paris branch was also attacked. Some Rothschilds escaped. Others had to pay massive bribes to survive. They lost not just money, but generations of work, libraries, collections, entire legacies destroyed in months. The war ended, but the damage was deep. The family slowly reclaimed some of their property, but not all. Some stolen artworks are still in museums today, with no return. After World War II, the Rothschilds began to step back. The world of finance was now dominated by corporations, global institutions, and central banks. The quiet, family-run empire model was fading. Some branches closed. Others merged with modern companies. They still owned land, wine businesses, and investment firms. But the days of advising kings and shaping empires were over. And yet, even in this quieter role, their name lived on. Some saw them as symbols of survival. Others still spread conspiracies, claiming they controlled governments, media, even world events. These stories were not true. But they refused to die. The real Rothschilds were still wealthy, still private, and still careful. They learned from history. They stayed out of headlines. They gave interviews rarely. They invested in art, science, and charity. They had been powerful for over 200 years, not through force, but through patience, strategy, and silence. After World War II, the Rothschild family was not as powerful as before. They had lost many banks, homes, and artworks. But they were still standing. That alone made them different. Many Jewish families in Europe lost everything, including their lives. The Rothschilds lost money. But they survived. And they had something else: knowledge, connections, and patience. They did not try to rebuild their empire in the same way. The world had changed. Big banks now had hundreds of employees, shareholders, and computers. The old system of handwritten letters and trusted messengers was gone. So the Rothschilds changed too. They focused on private investment, real estate, art, quiet business, not global finance. In France, Guy de Rothschild reopened the Paris Bank. He modernized it. He welcomed computers, public relations, and new talent. He was also a public figure, charming, stylish, and connected to the cultural elite. But in 1981, the French government turned socialist and nationalized many banks, including his. The Rothschild name was taken off the door. Again, the family was pushed aside by politics. But again, they returned. In the UK, Jacob Rothschild left the family bank and started his own investment group. He built it from nothing, made smart deals, and became one of the most respected financiers in London. He supported science, education, and archaeology. He also gave millions to restore historic buildings and art. But he avoided politics. He had seen what happened when the family got too close to power. Another Rothschild, Edmund, focused on wine. He expanded the family's vineyards in France and South America. Others worked in foundations, environmental projects, or private banking. The family had become more like a network of individuals, not a single empire. They no longer ruled European finance. But they were still everywhere, in culture, in business, in quiet influence. And then something strange happened. As their real power became smaller, the myths about them became larger. In the 1990s and 2000s, conspiracy theories exploded, especially on the internet. Some websites claimed the Rothschilds controlled all central banks. Some said they planned world wars. Others said they were part of secret societies or even ruled the world in secret. None of it was true. Most of it was recycled lies from centuries earlier. But the stories spread. People wanted simple answers for complex problems. The Rothschild name became a shortcut for fear of elites, banks, and globalism. And because the family stayed private, they never answered back. Silence only made the stories louder. Some family members were hurt by this. They were not part of global plots. They were lawyers, winemakers, scientists, writers. They gave to charities, spoke at universities, raised children. But they were born into a name they couldn't escape. In one interview, a Rothschild said, "We're just a family with history. Not a secret government." Still, the real story remained unusual. In a world where fortunes rise and fall in a decade, the Rothschilds had kept wealth and influence for over 250 years. Not through luck. Through long thinking. They avoided public fights. They didn't go after fame. They protected their privacy the way other families protect gold. In the 21st century, the Rothschilds began to speak a little more. Not to defend conspiracies, but to tell their real story. A few wrote books. Some appeared in documentaries. They spoke about the Holocaust, about their art collections, about the work they had done to recover stolen family treasures. Some of the family's artwork, stolen by Nazis during the war, was returned decades later. Paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Renoir. Furniture, jewelry, letters. Each object had a long story. And each return was emotional. It wasn't just about money. It was about memory. About identity. Meanwhile, the family continued to operate private banks in Europe, in London, Paris, Zurich. They advised wealthy families, ran investment funds, and managed land. Quiet work. Nothing flashy. No skyscrapers with the Rothschild name in lights. Just stable business with old clients who valued trust. By now, there were many Rothschilds. Dozens. Some still used the name in banking. Others didn't. Some married outside the family. Some became artists, doctors, or teachers. The idea of cousins marrying cousins had ended long ago. The modern Rothschild family looked more like a family, not a dynasty. And yet, something about the name remained powerful. Not because of magic. Not because of secrets. But because it represented something rare in history, survival, over centuries. Through revolutions, wars, and lies. Through success and scandal. Through change. While others built fast and fell hard, the Rothschilds built slow and lasted. Today, the Rothschild family is still active. But they no longer control empires. They do not lead governments. They do not shape wars. Their influence is quieter, more personal, more focused. They own private banks in Europe, in London, Paris, Geneva. They manage money for rich families, old institutions, and charities. They don't appear in tabloids. They rarely give interviews. They work behind the scenes, just as their ancestors did. One of the best-known names in the modern family was Jacob Rothschild, from the British branch. He was known for his intelligence, his calm style, and his deep connections in finance and culture. He led investment companies, funded scientific research, and supported the arts. He helped restore historic buildings in Britain and supported Jewish cultural life in Europe. He passed away in 2024. Many called him the last great public Rothschild, the last one to speak openly, the last one with a large voice in public affairs. The family today is not united like it was 200 years ago. There is no single head. There are many Rothschilds, each with different interests. Some continue in finance. Some work in agriculture, vineyards, or environmental projects. Others have left business completely. They live in different countries, speak different languages, and sometimes even disagree. The family is now a name, a heritage, not a single machine. Still, they hold great wealth. The exact number is not public. The Rothschilds never publish a full list of their assets. But experts say the family owns billions of dollars in property, private investments, and land. They also own famous vineyards, such as Château Lafite Rothschild in France, one of the most famous wine estates in the world. That part of the family's legacy is both cultural and commercial. They also support many charities. Over the years, the Rothschilds have donated to hospitals, museums, schools, and universities. They helped fund cancer research, history archives, and projects to fight poverty. But they do it quietly. Their style has never been about attention. One of the most important parts of their work today is recovering art stolen during World War II. Many paintings and objects were taken from Jewish families during the Nazi years. Some of them belonged to the Rothschilds. Others to people they supported. The family works with museums and legal teams to return these items to their rightful owners. For them, it's not about money. It's about justice, memory, and closing old wounds. Despite all this, the name Rothschild is still surrounded by myth. In books, in online videos, in conspiracy forums, the family is often painted as a shadowy force, controlling governments, elections, and wars. None of this is based in fact. But it keeps spreading. Because the name is old, powerful, and mysterious. And because most of the world still does not understand how power actually works. The truth is more human, and more interesting. The Rothschilds were never perfect. They used information to their advantage. They made secret deals. They protected their money first. They worked closely with monarchies, and they made enemies along the way. But they also built real businesses, supported science and art, and gave back to the communities where they lived. They succeeded because they had rules. Stay quiet. Stay prepared. Invest in knowledge. Never depend on one country or one government. Protect the family. Adapt fast. Think in decades, not days. These rules did not make them kings, but they helped them survive longer than most royal families. If you visit Europe today, you can still see their name on streets, buildings, museums, libraries. In Paris. In London. In Vienna. But they are not everywhere. They never wanted to be everywhere. They wanted to last. And they did. For more than 250 years, the Rothschild family has walked through the center of world history, sometimes in the light, often in the shadows. They began in a poor ghetto in Frankfurt, with coins and codes and silence. They rose through banking, diplomacy, and calculation. They were attacked by kings, mobs, and dictators. They lost homes, businesses, and freedom. And yet, they are still here. That is their true story. Not magic. Not myth. Just strategy, memory, and survival.